Welcome to your deep dive all about John Milton. I know you're fascinated by his work and want to go beyond the typical Paradise Lost focus. So we've got like a whole collection of sources here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, biographical info, some of his lesser-known prose and poetry, even some critical
From
interpretations.
different eras.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
that's fantastic.
So our mission is to kind of uncover like who Milton was, how his life shaped his writing, and why he's still important, today.
It's always so fascinating to me to kind of uncover the person, behind all the great works that we read.
Absolutely, and that's what we're going to try and do here. We're going to do a deep dive into both his life and he works here, paying special attention to those pieces you might not be as familiar with.
Right.
And I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you.
Your knowledge of literary history is going to help us connect Milton to that larger picture.
I think you'll be surprised by how much more there is to discover about him.
I think so too.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with Milton the man. One quote from his tractate of education really struck me. A complete and generous education fits a man to perform justly, skillfully, and magnanimously all the offices, both private and public, of peace and war.
Wow.
It seems like Milton saw education as preparation for a life of purpose, not just, to get a job.
Yeah, that's a crucial insight, I think, into understanding Milton.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a writer. He was deeply involved in the political and religious, upheavals of his time.
Right.
He was a fervent advocate for liberty, civil and religious, and really believed that what he was doing was serving a higher purpose.
He certainly wasn't afraid to take a stand.
No, he was not.
And then there's his blindness.
Yes.
The excerpt from On His Blindness is so powerful.
It is.
He questions God. Why give me this gift only to take it away? But ultimately, he submits to the divine will.
Yeah.
You can really feel the weight of that struggle in his words.
Absolutely. And you know what I find so intriguing about Milton's blindness is that it may have actually enriched his writing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Some scholars suggest that by losing his physical sight, it heightened his other senses, which led to the vivid imagery and evocative language that we see in, Paradise Lost and other works.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's a testament to his resilience, turning a personal tragedy into a source of creative power.
Yeah, his descriptions are so rich. It's almost like he's painting with words.
Yes.
Speaking of personal experiences, Milton's life was pretty complex. 3 marriages, a strained relationship with his daughters, deep friendships with men like Charles Diodati, who he memorialized in Epitaphium Daemonis.
Right. It does make you wonder how much of his personal life kind of seeped into his writing.
It does.
It's a tricky area, I think. While we can explore potential connections, we have to be careful not to read his biography into the work too literally.
Right. Definitely something to keep in mind as we explore his work. And speaking of which, let's dive into the poetry.
Okay, let's do it.
I know we're focusing on Milton beyond Paradise Lost.
Yes.
Which is an undertaking in itself.
It is.
But I think you'll be amazed by the depth and variety of his lesser-known works.
I'm sure I will.
We have some excerpts from Comus, for example.
Yeah.
Now, Comus is a mask,
Yes.
a form of elaborate courtly entertainment.
Popular in his day.
Very much so.
Yes.
And yet within this seemingly lighthearted form, Milton manages to wrestle with some pretty weighty themes. Virtue temptation? The power of chastity.
Oh,
It's a real hallmark of his work. Using art to explore these profound moral questions.
Yes.
And we can't forget the mythological elements.
No.
Nymphs, shepherd spirits. The attendant spirit in Comus is particularly interesting,
Oh, yeah.
especially with that debate surrounding the violet embroidered veil.
Right.
Was this a real place? How does this detail tie into the larger themes of the work?
Yeah, well, that debate really highlights the power of place in Milton's work.
Oh, okay.
Even when he's dealing with fantastical elements, the setting isn't merely a backdrop. It takes on a life of its own, almost becoming another character in a way, shaping the story. And whether or not the veil was real, I think the question itself speaks to how Milton's work continues to spark our curiosity
Right.
and invite interpretation even centuries later.
Then there's Lycidas, an elegy written for Milton's friend, Charles Diodati.
Yes.
Even in his grief, Milton weaves in these profound meditations on life, death, and the role of the poet.
Yes, and the language. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, the language.
Lycidas is a prime example of Milton's absolute mastery of language.
Yes.
The imagery, the metaphors, the allusions, they work together to create this incredibly complex and layered tapestry of meaning.
Yeah.
It challenges us to slow down and savor each line and unpack its richness.
It can feel like you need a decoder ring at times,
It can.
but that challenge is part of what makes it so rewarding. writing, wouldn't you say?
I think so, absolutely.
And the fascinating thing is Milton wasn't just a poet. He worked in so many forms: sonnets, elegies, pamphlets, even political treatises. The range of his work is truly astounding.
It really is.
It really is. And you're absolutely right. And speaking of his political writings, they were incredibly influential in his time.
Oh, yes, they were.
Milton saw his pen as a weapon,
He did.
fighting for truth and liberty.
Absolutely.
He believed that words could change the world, and he wasn't afraid to use them.
And that brings us to his politics and belief.
And that brings us to his politics and beliefs, a topic I am eager to explore further.
Me too.
So let's dive into those political and religious convictions. You mentioned that he saw his writing as a weapon.
He did.
Where do we see that most clearly?
Well, one of the most striking examples is his considerations touching the likeliest means to remove hirelings out of the church.
Okay.
In it, he just fiercely denounces paid clergy,
Wow.
essentially accusing them of corruption and hypocrisy.
He doesn't mince words, does he?
No, he does not. But it goes deeper than just money.
Yeah.
If you connect this to the broader picture,
Yeah.
you see that his critique wasn't just about money. It was about power. He believed that a true church should be based on spiritual authority,
Right.
not worldly wealth or political influence.
Okay.
This was radical stuff for his time, a direct challenge to the established order.
And speaking of challenging the status quo, his defense of free speech and the press in Areopagitica
Yes.
is still cited today.
Oh, absolutely.
He believed that truth would prevail in a free marketplace of ideas, no matter how unpopular those ideas might be.
And remember, this was during the English Civil War,
Yeah.
a time of intense censorship and religious persecution.
Yeah.
Milton was putting his neck on the line for his beliefs.
It's almost hard to fathom the risks he was taking.
It is.
What stands out to you most about his political convictions?
I think what's most striking is his unwavering consistency.
Okay.
Whether he was writing about education, religion, or politics, Milton always came back to individual liberty and the pursuit of truth.
Yeah.
He was a true idealist in that sense, letting those core beliefs inform everything he wrote.
That's a great observation. It seems we can't really understand the poetry without understanding the man behind it.
I think that's true.
But what about his place in the literary landscape? You mentioned that he was considered the last great Renaissance writer.
Right?
How did he build on or break from the traditions of his time?
Well, he's fascinating because he represents both continuity and rupture.
Okay.
He was steeped in the traditions of humanism and classical learning,
Right.
but also a fiercely independent thinker.
Yeah.
He admired certain literary giants, but wasn't afraid to critique them either.
Now I'm curious. Any literary beefs we should know about?
Well, there's a fascinating passage in one of our sources about Milton's opinion of Shakespeare.
Really, Shakespeare? What could he possibly find fault with?
It seems that Milton found Shakespeare a bit too casual with language. Remember, Milton was all about precision, elevated language, complex sentence structures?
Right.
He likely saw Shakespeare's more colloquial approach as lacking the grandeur and gravitas he strived for in his own work.
So Shakespeare's writing for the masses, and Milton's aiming for something more refined, almost elitist.
You could say that, but it's important to note that he also drew inspiration from earlier writers.
Okay.
He was a huge admirer of Edmund Spenser, the author of The Faerie Queene.
Oh, wow.
You can see Spenser's influence in Milton's lush descriptions, allegorical storytelling, and exploration of complex moral themes.
So he's taking what came before him, refining it, and forging his own unique path. What about his influence on later writers? Did his work kind of ripple through the centuries?
Absolutely. His impact on English literature is immense.
Wow.
His mastery of blank verse, unrhymed, iambic pentameter influenced poets for generations. Think Wordsworth, Keats, Tennyson.
Wow.
They all learned from Milton's skillful handling of that form.
That's amazing to think of him as a literary trailblazer, paving the way for some of the biggest names in poetry.
And his influence goes beyond poetry.
Okay.
His ideas about individual liberty and freedom of speech resonated with writers and thinkers across various disciplines. Yeah.
You know, he championed the individual conscience, and his words continue to inspire those fighting for justice and equality even today.
So after exploring all these facets of his life and work,
Yes.
what's the key takeaway for someone trying to grasp the essence of John Milton? What's the one thing you'd want our listener to remember?
I think the most important takeaway is that Milton was a complex and multifaceted figure.
Yeah.
He was a brilliant poet, a passionate advocate for liberty, and a deeply spiritual man.
Right.
His life and work were deeply intertwined, and each aspect illuminates the others.
It sounds like you can't separate the art from the artist.
That's right.
To fully appreciate the poetry, we need to engage with the entirety of who he was.
Exactly. And while his work can be challenging at times, it's also incredibly rewarding. It invites us to think deeply, to wrestle with complex ideas, and to discover our own interpretations.
Yeah,
Milton's legacy isn't just about the beauty of his language.
right.
It's about the enduring power of his ideas.
And speaking of enduring power,
You mentioned earlier that Milton saw his writing as a weapon in the fight for truth.
I did.
What battles do we face today that might demand such passionate and eloquent defense?
That's a question worth pondering, isn't it?
It is.
What injustices or threats to liberty stir our souls?
Yeah.
Where do we see a need for voices to rise up and challenge the status quo?
Hmm.
Perhaps that's the most valuable lesson Milton offers.
Okay.
A reminder that words have power, and we have a responsibility to wield them wisely in the pursuit of truth and justice.
What a powerful thought. It seems this deep dive has taken us far beyond Paradise Lost,
It has.
revealing a man deeply engaged with the world and its complexities.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
I think so too.
There's a whole universe within Milton's work waiting to be explored.
As we've been talking about Milton's legacy and the depth of his ideas,
Right.
I keep thinking about those criticisms of his style.
Yeah.
That whole poetic diction debate.
Right.
Some people find him incredibly difficult to read.
Well, it's true. Milton's language can be incredibly dense and challenging at times.
Yeah,
His syntax is complex, his vocabulary is extensive,
right.
and he's not afraid to throw in a healthy dose of allusions. He demands a lot from his readers.
I'll admit I've stumbled over a sentence or two myself.
Oh, me too.
But, I also think that's part of what makes him so fascinating.
Yeah,
He's not spoon-feeding you the meaning.
right.
He's inviting you to, actively participate in the process of understanding.
Exactly. It's almost like a collaboration between
Yeah.
the poet and the reader. You have to be willing to slow down, consult a dictionary,
Yo.
really wrestle with the language to unlock its full meaning. But the rewards are well worth the effort.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Like you're on a treasure hunt,
Yeah.
sifting through these layers of language
Right.
to discover those nuggets of brilliance.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to Milton's purpose as a writer.
Okay.
He wasn't writing to entertain the masses.
Right.
Or to produce easy-to-digest sound bites. He was writing to challenge people, to make them think deeply about complex issues.
He was writing to change the world one mind at a time.
Precisely. And when you consider the historical context,
Right.
the political turmoil, the religious debates, the censorship he faced,
Yeah.
it makes his commitment to using language as a weapon for truth and justice even more remarkable.
Yeah, it's a reminder that words have power,
They do.
and they can be used to inspire, to provoke, and to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely. Milton's legacy isn't just about the beauty of his poetry.
Right.
It's about the enduring power of his ideas
Yeah.
and his unwavering belief in the transformative potential of language.
Well said. Any final thoughts for our listener before we wrap up this deep dive into the world of John Milton?
I would simply encourage our listener to approach Milton with a sense of adventure and an open mind.
Okay.
Don't be intimidated by his reputation for complexity. Embrace the challenge, get lost in his language, wrestle with his ideas, and discover the beauty and brilliance that lie beneath the surface. You won't be disappointed.
That's wonderful advice.
Hmm.
It seems like this journey through Milton's life and work has left us with more questions than answers, but in the best possible way.
It always does.
Yeah, it sparked a desire to delve deeper, to explore more, and to continue uncovering the richness of his thought.
That's the magic of Milton. He stays with you long after you've finished reading. His ideas linger, his words echo, and his passion for truth continues to inspire.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating exploration. It's been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of John Milton. We hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have. Remember, the world of knowledge and ideas is vast and endlessly fascinating. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those requests coming. Until next time,